Alrighty folks, it has been over a year and a half now since my last Q&A video, and so as such, I figured it was as good a time as ever to do a new one. And so as always, I reached out to you over on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and here on YouTube to see what questions you had for me. And so without further ado, let's get answering. Alright, first question comes from friend of the channel, Ramal, over on Twitter, who asks, what is one Android feature iOS desperately needs, and vice versa? Phenomenal question straight out of the gate, and I spent a lot of time mulling this over. But the funny thing is, with iOS, whilst there are a heap of features that I'd love for Android to bring over, like iMessage or FaceTime or AirDrop, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that these are never going to make the jump because they're Apple exclusive features. So that limits us to either hardware-related features like the Face ID. I'd love to see that brought over to Android. And then we have non-exclusive software features like custom home screen setups based on focus modes, for example. But I think the one thing that iOS has absolutely nailed that no Android phone has fully managed to replicate yet is the reliability of the camera app. And to be fair, there are some Android phones that have gotten close, like Xiaomi flagships, for example, but even at their best, they're still not quite as reliable as the iPhone's camera app, particularly when it comes to freezing motion as soon as you tap that shutter button, and also how seamless the lens switching is when capturing videos. I would love it if Android could match iOS in this area, but Apple is just so far in front right now that I honestly don't see it happening anytime soon. Now, when we flip things around though, there is a long list of software features that I would love to see Apple implement, none of which are proprietary, so this is just a case of Apple refusing to implement them, but we're talking features like a clipboard or a better notification system, and that's not to mention home screen customization related features like letting us disable the dock or adding support for third-party icons. And in fact, I actually made a video a few months back with everything I want to see fixed with iOS, so check that out if you want the full rundown. But given that I'm literally using the iPhone 17 Pro at the time of filming this video, so this is the best time to ask me, the biggest feature that I'd love for Apple to implement is a universal back gesture. Again, I unpacked the differences between Android's back gesture and iOS's back gesture in that video, so go check that out if you want more info. But there you go. This next question comes from a user who goes by Redacted, but they ask, if you could pick one feature not customization related from every Android skin, which would it be to put into SamOS? And then they also add, which physical hardware would you use for the phone? So essentially, what is my dream smartphone, right? And shame on you for not letting me say customization related features, because that is absolutely what I would take from One UI, but I will honor the question, so here we go. From Pixel phones, I'd probably take the now playing functionality. Then from Nothing OS, probably the app drawer, specifically its design and the feature that lets us pin apps to the top. Then from One UI, I'd probably take the quick settings panel, believe it or not, especially the one that's apparently coming with One UI 8.5, which gives you way more flexibility with its layout. Then from Oxygen and Color OS, it'd probably be the fluidity. And then finally from HyperOS, it'd be the camera app. And then as for which physical hardware I'd use for the phone, it'd be a real toss-up between the S25 Ultra with the S Pen or the regular Pixel 10, but I think ultimately I'd actually go for the regular Pixel 10 because it has the smaller form factor, it also feels nicer in the hand, and it has that camera visor design, which means there is no side-to-side wobble when using the phone flat on a table, and that's something that I absolutely love about it. All right, moving over to Instagram now, and Afkar_AKR has asked a real doozy saying, what is the best Android app that you have ever used? And oh my golly, how do I round this down to just one app? But if I really had to pick one, it'd have to be an app that I've used for a very long time and that I still use to this day. So it's absolutely stood the test of time. I also can't say any of my own apps, of course. And so in all honesty, I'd probably have to say that my choice for my favorite app of all time is none other than KWGT. This is seriously one of the oldest customization apps in the game. And whilst third-party launches have all come and gone over the years, KWGT has not. I literally use it on every single home screen setup that I create. I've also featured it possibly hundreds of times on the channel over the years, probably more than any other app actually. And so yeah, very happy to award the title to KWGT. Then Daniel Mansfield says, how do you make iOS 26 not suck? And this is a seriously loaded question, but he's not wrong. iOS 26, whilst visually beautiful when static, it's also been one of, if not the least fluid versions of iOS that I've ever used, and my biggest gripe with it is that home screen customization is now an absolute nightmare, thanks to the fact that every single element on the home screen now has these glassy borders. That said, I have been hard at work over the past month, experimenting with various new home screen setup configurations. I'm happy to give you a sneak peek, so here it is. Keep an eye out for the full guide because it'll be on the channel in the next couple of weeks. Then Louis Baguette asks, what's your camera setup? And this one's super easy. Right now I use a Sony a7R Mark V for all of my top-down shots, and then a Sony a7 IV for everything else. Okay, jumping over to Threads now, and Louis the Cool Kid asks, what motivates you to continue doing content creation, and have you considered branching out to different content other than tech? Well, what primarily motivates me is that this is my full-time job, so this is how I make a living and how I support my family and so forth. But then I just love making videos. And so the fact that I get to sit in my little office making videos that no one tells me what they have to be about or how to make them, I mean, that is seriously awesome. But then as for the second part of the question, have I considered branching out to different content other than tech? And well, I actually have experimented with other genres over the years, with probably my favorite being that renovating our house series I did a few years back. But unfortunately, YouTube doesn't tend to reward channels who step too far outside their niche. And so when you're doing this as your full-time job and you rely on videos performing well to make a solid income, that's where the business side of your brain kicks into gear and you've got to make a decision. Luckily, I personally love making videos about any topic, so I have no issues keeping my feet firmly in the tech genre. But maybe if my videos didn't take so long to produce, I'd actually consider branching out more often, but either way, great question. And then following on from that, Dami Kahiwa asks, how long does it take to make a video? And look, I'm actually generally working on several videos at the one time. For example, I'll usually script at least 2 videos before then filming the A-roll for both on the same day. Sometimes I'll do even more than that. So it is somewhat difficult to pinpoint it to an exact amount of time. But if I had to give an average, I'd say probably about 4 or 5 days, which includes all the scripting, all the filming, and then finishing off the edit. Sometimes it'll be longer, sometimes shorter. So yeah, 4 or 5 days seems about the average. Okay, moving over to questions from YouTube now, and AskWanthaJ3034 asks, why did you stop the best app series? And I've seen questions like this on nearly every single video that I've published since I stopped my top Android app series back in March of this year. And so here's a very simple 2-part answer. Firstly, the series wasn't finding the same success as it did in its glory years. And then secondly, ultimately, I just stopped enjoying the process of making them. So for context, it had been over 8 years of making monthly top Android apps videos. And honestly, after that amount of time, it was just becoming so dang hard to find 10 really good apps every single month. And as a result, the research and scripting phase for these videos actually took way longer than any other video that I make for the channel. And then even producing the videos had become pretty mundane to me. So as such, my interest in making them was at an all-time low. But then on top of that, as I said, the series had kind of stopped seeing the success that it had originally had in those first 4 or 5 years. I think if every episode had still been hitting 200,000 plus views, no sweat, then that would have convinced me to keep going. But you know, after seeing quite a good amount of episodes really struggling, I thought, I think it's time to wrap this up. And as much as I know that this is gonna sting to hear, it has honestly been one of the best decisions that I've ever made, because the amount of relief that I've felt at not having to do a new episode every single month since stopping the series has been pretty monumental. Even dipping my toes back into it a couple of months ago with that 15 secret apps video, that was honestly one of the hardest videos that I've had to make this year. So making that certainly didn't make me wish that I was still doing the monthly episodes anymore. Anyway, hopefully that answers the question, but I will say keep an eye on the channel before the end of the year, because I have something super fun planned that I reckon anyone who enjoyed my top Android app series is seriously gonna love. Then we've got a much simpler to answer question from redwayne_Hafiz, who asks, which Android OEM skin is your favorite? And hands down, it has gotta be One UI. I mean, it is just so well-rounded these days with literally every feature you could ever want, whilst also looking really clean at the same time. But then more than anything, the level of home screen customization it gives you is completely unmatched. And I honestly don't ever see any other phone coming close to what One UI offers in this regard. Anytime I've used any non-Samsung phone this year, I've found myself wishing I was back on One UI, so I think that absolutely answers the question. And the last question comes from Harsh the Rockstar, who says, what's your take on Nova Launch's future, and are there any alternatives? And for those who missed it, a month or so back, the original developer of Nova Launcher, Kevin Barry, he announced that support for Nova Launcher was officially discontinued. And even though technically it still works as of the making of this video, knowing how Google operates and that it requires apps to increase API levels each year and so forth, This does mean that unless someone is able to resurrect it, Nova Launcher will unfortunately go the way of all the other abandoned apps that we've known and loved over the years. Thankfully, all is not lost because there are actually a number of really great third-party launcher alternatives that I reckon are worth checking out. If you're looking for the most like-for-like replacements that have that sort of universal home screen launcher design, then there are 3 great options in my opinion: Launchair, Hyperion Launcher, and Octopi Launcher. Launchair is the one that most closely replicates the Pixel Launcher aesthetic, but also has almost every customization feature built in. And then the cherry on top is that it's also completely free and open source, which makes it a really popular option for a lot of users. The only slight drawbacks are that it's never really gotten out of beta, or at least not for a long time anyway, so the updates are often a little buggy, and it's also probably the least fluid as far as home screen animations go. Hyperion Launcher, on the other hand, has hands down the best app opening and closing animations of the lot, thanks almost exclusively to the way the wallpaper animates. Literally no other third-party launcher does this, which is crazy to me. But then on top of that, the launcher itself also has a very pixel-like design and lots of customization options built in as well. The only drawbacks with it are that it doesn't get updated that often anymore, maybe 1 or 2 updates per year, and the app drawer has always been a little buggy for me, which I find annoying. The third and most exciting launcher though is one called Octopi Launcher, which is a very young launcher on the scene. It's only been around for about a year at this point, but by golly, does it get updated a lot, and literally every single update brings about super cool new features, plus it's nearly just as fluid as Hyperion Launcher, and if it's able to get that wallpaper animation sorted out, then it would absolutely overtake it. The only thing I don't love about it is the design of the app drawer. I'd prefer it if there was an option to make it look more like Hyperion's app drawer, for example, with a proper search bar built in that looks cleaner like this. I also wish that the font was a little cleaner, like Product Sans, and actually that we had the option of using third-party fonts for that matter. And I wish that we also had the option of turning off the drop shadow for the app drawer text as well. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see those changes made in the near future. That's how active the developer is. And I'm even thinking of doing a full video on this launcher before the end of the year, so keep an eye out for that. Now, aside from those 3, which, as I said, have that sort of basic home screen launcher aesthetic with a standard home layout and app drawer configuration, there are 2 other options that are also very much so worth checking out. The first of which is Niagara Launcher, which is actually right up there with Hyperion and Octopi as far as home screen animations go. There's also one called Smart Launcher, which is also very decent itself, but both of these launchers have quite different design aesthetics, so aren't the ones that I gravitate towards, but they're definitely still worth looking into because they're actively getting updated all the time. But that's it. As always, a big thank you to everyone that sent in questions, and apologies to those I didn't get to in this video. And if I didn't answer your question, then feel free to drop it as a comment down below and I'll try and answer it in the next couple of weeks. But aside from that, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.